What is up, everyone? Today I'll be ranking all 13 UFC pay-per-view main events from 2025. There were some extreme ups and downs this year, and when it comes to pay-per-view main events, and I'll be going through each and every one of them from worst to best. By the way, this is the objective list, so if yours is different, unfortunately, brother, you got it wrong. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 13, we have the main event from UFC 321, and that is Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. This fight actually started off pretty strong with both guys landing, and Gane was actually winning by a few strikes, but that all came to a screeching halt when Gane decided to use Aspinall's face like a bowling ball. Honestly, all he really needed to do was put his thumb in his mouth for the full bowling form. That eye poke caused the fight to end in a no contest, and this was the only no contest or disqualification for the entire year for pay-per-view main events, which basically on technicality makes this the worst pay-per-view main event of the year. Coming in at number 12, we have Dricus du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev, the main event of UFC 319. People were hyping this fight up as it was gonna be one of like biblical proportions. And people thought that it would look something like this for the entire fight. It turns out it looked a lot more like this. Khamzat just laid on him the entire fight and didn't try to advance beyond just holding Dricus in a crucifix and doing no damage. This fight was just so boring, dude, and it like it was just the worst fight of the year that actually had a winner. Obviously, Tom versus Gane didn't have a winner. This fight did. It sucked. Therefore, second worst main event of the year. Coming in at number 11, we have the main event of UFC 311, Islam Makhachev versus Money Moicano. The most unfortunate aspect of this fight was that it wasn't even supposed to happen. Arman was supposed to fight Islam, pulled out one day before due to a back injury. You know, whether that's actually true, leave that up to you to decide. And it left us with this all-time main event right here. Moicano was actually able to compete for the first part of this fight. He was landing basically the same amount of strikes as Islam on the feet, but unfortunately for Money Moik, Islam was easily able to land a takedown and secure a Darce choke towards the end of the first round, ending the fight before that round could even end. This fight wasn't actually bad at all, or because it was like a finish, but just the fact that we were like robbed of a real like all-time main event in Islam versus Arman makes this fight a lot worse than it was. And also the fact that the fight that solidified Islam Makhachev as the GOAT was the GOAT of lightweight, was against Renato Moicano. Anyway, coming in at number 10, we have Islam versus JDM. I was actually at this fight live. We had 4 knockouts in a row starting towards the end of the prelims with the Bo Nickel fight, all the way through the Michael Morales, Sean Brady fight. And then we get to the electric co-main and main events in Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili and JDM versus Islam. Both these fights absolutely sucked. They were basically the same thing. And the disappointment from that, like, it was so much worse seeing it live than it was at home. Like, obviously the event was so cool and all that, but just the fact that like this is the grand main event after having such an electric 4 fights in a row to get these two absolutely sucked. But much like the Dricus versus Khamzat fight, this fight consisted pretty much purely of Islam landing a takedown, holding JDM down, and not much else. The one thing that does make this fight better than Khamzat DDP is that Islam actually did try to do damage, try to land some strikes on the ground. But alongside already being boring, like I said, This fight took place after 4 TKOs in a row and then a boring co-main. So, like, in all of the fans that were there and everyone at home was obviously itching for something that was going to be super entertaining, especially after Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. Um, but that absolute war that everybody was expecting did not happen. Coming in the number 9 spot, we have Pereira versus Ank 1. Um, these guys both kind of gave frustrating performances in this fight. Starting off with the winner of this fight, Ankalaev, he would land strikes that would have that could have led to lethal combos and could have potentially put Alex away, but instead he just kept shooting takedowns that did not work. And this is where my frustration with Alex comes in because he showed that he had this killer takedown defense, but he still just opted to be complacent and kept being scared. And just tried to keep going for leg kicks, but leg kicks don't win fights. Sure, you have a ton of damaging leg kicks, but unless that ends in a TKO, if it goes decision, leg kicks aren't going to be the things that win the fights. And it just pisses me off because both of these guys had the opportunity to make this fight really exciting, and adding the fact that Alex is one of my favorite fighters in the roster right now, I was obviously not very happy with this fight. Coming in at number 8, we have the main event of UFC 312, and that was Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2. This might seem like a pretty low ranking for what was actually a pretty good fight. So from this point forward, I like to make it clear that all of these fights going forward and this one are actually at the very least good fights. Going into this fight, people were talking about how Strickland, oh, he's getting his belt back, he won the first fight, and I honestly do believe that Strickland won the first fight. But and I was one of those people that was like, you know what, I actually think Strickland is going to win this fight. I think his more refined style is going to do better than Dricus's more sloppy blitzing style, for lack of a better word. And this this thought process, is we as the fans that thought Strickland was going to win this fight are partially to blame here because we thought he had fully evolved past the strictly teep and jab method. But what actually happened was that Strickland did not evolve and was instead dominated for 5 rounds by Dricus, who just kept blitzing, moving forward, being unorthodox, and Sean just couldn't answer to that. And, Dricus was mixing in punches and kicks that absolutely destroyed Sean's face. I tried to find pictures online of right after Sean's nose basically burst open. He was spouting blood from his nose, but I couldn't find any good ones. But overall, just a really dominant performance from Dricus in this fight. And this is when I was already on the Dricus bandwagon at this point. I'm not going to lie after the Izzy performance. But after this, I was like, damn, this guy is the most, one of, if not the most entertaining champions in the UFC right now. So great performance out of Dricus. And this really soured me on Strickland, I'm not going to lie, just because after that first Izzy fight, everyone was so high on Strickland. And after his war with Dricus in the first fight, everyone was a Strickland fan. And then he was just kind of so boring afterwards. And he just tried to keep kind of hang on to this popularity just by saying a ton of offensive stuff at random times. And you'd check Twitter, and for the MMA side of Twitter, be trending oh my God, Sean Strickland said this while streaming with Aiden Ross and Nina Drama. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, honestly, about Sean Strickland. Anyway, coming in at number 7, we have the main event of UFC 316, which was Merab versus Sean 2. Despite what people may have thought at first, the original fight between Sean and Merab was pretty close, but I cannot say the same for this one. Merab was pretty much easily able to piece Sean up, knock him down, and easily score takedowns, which eventually led to a north-south choke from Merab, which was his first submission in 10 fights, to add insult to injury for Sean O'Malley. I guess ditching the rainbow hair and the walkout song made him lose his power. So see if he brings that back in the next fight. But at this point, I was really starting to like Marab after he beat Umar, but I fully hopped on the Dwalishvili train after this one. Although I am happy Piotr Jan beat him in the last fight. I'll get into that later on. Coming in at number 6, we have UFC 315's main event: Bilal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena. The Canelo hands clearly didn't work out in this fight because JDM murked this guy. Um, can't really remember his name, it's on the tip of my tongue, but JDM did destroy him. In all seriousness, Bilal simply couldn't keep up with the pace of JDM on this one. Jack was mixing in punches and knees to secure a super dominant win. And I don't hate Bilal as much as some people do. Some people hate Bilal, especially going into his championship fight with Leon Edwards and before that. The hate for Bilal was actually nuts. After he won the belt, it got better, and people still don't hate Bilal as much as they did at that point. But yeah, like I said, I was never the biggest Bilal hater. I did kind of like when he beat Leon Edwards, but I'm a pretty big JDM fan, so I was very pleased with the outcome of this fight. Entering the top, oh, sorry, did I? There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. I'll edit that out. Entering the top 5, we have the legacy battle for the belt that has no value and probably shouldn't have been made in the first place. That being Holloway versus Poirier 3 for the BMF belt. This was just at the end of the day like an entertaining match. It wasn't a war by any means because Max was clearly winning, but Dustin was able to land some great shots over the course of the fight. And we also got a poetic ending to the amazing career of one of my personal favorite fighters of all time, Dustin Poirier, with both guys pointing to the center of the octagon and going at it for the last 10 seconds. The best way to end the career of that man. And overall, that's it. Just an entertaining fight. Not much else to say there. For number 4, we have the main event of International Fight Week, UFC 317, which was Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I had a hard time placing this fight. I'm not going to lie, because Charles Oliveira is my personal favorite fighter of all time. And the fight was like 2 minutes long, but it was just such an impressive performance from Ilia that I had to put it this high. Honestly, for a second, when Charles Oliveira had that heel hook, I thought he had a chance. But when Ilya unloaded that combo onto Charles, putting him out cold, all that hope was crushed. And to be honest, I was more like, damn, Ilya is like one of the GOATs now than I was like upset that Charles lost. Like, it was an insane performance. So, and as much as I hated the fact that my GOAT lost, I am still going to put this in the number 4 spot just because Ilya is so impressive. And he's got all these issues going on right now. I really do hope he does get back to the octagon soon enough because he is such an entertaining fighter, even if he has destroyed my 3 favorite fighters over the course of the last nearly 2 years now. This one at the number 3 spot might be a surprise to a lot of people because so many people, or like fight of the year, or at least title fight of the year, after this one was done. I think it's a little bit of recency bias. But at the number 3 spot, we have Merab versus Jan 2, the main event of UFC 323, the most recent and actually final pay-per-view of all time, at least in the ESPN era, and for the foreseeable future as we head into the Paramount era. Yeah, let's get into it. This fight was nothing like the first one. Jan just pieced up Merab and was able to defend all but one takedown, if I remember correctly. Merab had no answer for anything, and he looked as well as sounded like he was in pain. I think like when Jan, and again I haven't rewatched the fight, so my memory is a little bit fuzzy, but I like remember when Jan hit a body kick on Merab, he was like, "Ugh!" And I was like, dude, you cannot do that. Like, that's just gonna give Piotr Jan even more confidence. Jan put on an all-time performance in this fight and completed what is, in my opinion, the best, at least in the modern. I'm not even saying modern. What is the best UFC redemption arc of all time, in my opinion? From the Aljo grounded knee that got him DQ'd in this championship match, going on a losing streak, like losing to Sean O'Malley, who wasn't even in the top 10 at the time. I'm pretty sure he was number 11. Uh, to finally getting back on his feet, beating guys like Figgy, and even like being a company man, fighting guys like Marcus McGee, getting his way back to that belt and getting it again from Marab, who everyone thought he was going to lose to. I thought he was going to lose to. Just one of the best MMA redemption arcs. Uh, Actually, not even one of the best MMA redemption arc of all time, in my opinion. Coming at the number 2 spot, I have the main event of UFC 320, which is Ank vs. Pereira 2. There's heavy bias in this ranking, but I don't really care because this was the happiest, pretty much the happiest that, maybe the happiest I was after a main event this year. Actually, no. The number 1 spot was the happiest I was after a main event all year. But getting back to the actual fight, Pereira learned from the first fight and knew that he had takedown defense and knew overall he could be a better striker. So he just went full throttle, hit the gas, so aggressive right out the gate. And he secured a knockdown immediately and was able to ground and pound his way to a TKO in the first round. And we also have my personal favorite celebration of the year, or at least a pay-per-view main event. And again, this is a very biased ranking. But, dude, it just feels right to have Alex Pereira have the belt again. Like, it was a dark. How many months was that? Was that 7 months that Ankalaev had the belt? That was a dark 7 months. I remember back in March when Ank won the belt, like, how just depressed I was, bro. Like, I woke up that Sunday morning, I was still, like, kind of in shock when Pereira lost the belt when I went to bed that night. Wake up the next morning, genuinely just like depression washed over me. And yeah, I recovered. I just had to deal with it. But man, it just felt so right to have Alex Pereira uh, get that belt again. So very biased ranking, but I'm putting it at the number 2 spot. And at number 1 for the best pay-per-view main event of the year 2025, I have Volk versus Lopez. I guess I gotta call 1 now because 2 is gonna happen in January. Uh, this was the closest thing to a war. I would consider it personally a war, even though I think Volk did clearly win in the pay-per-view main events this year, because these guys were just going at it, bro. Like, honestly, this was the only fight out of this group, these 13 fights, that had me on the edge of my seat for 5 rounds. Like, I was so worried for Volk, but thankfully he was able to take control of the fight by the end, and thank God balance was restored to the universe, and Volk got that featherweight belt back. And to add on to it, like, actually, I already said this at the beginning, I had to add on to it. This was the happiest I was after a UFC fight this year, probably. Like, when I think about it, at least for these main events, this was the happiest that I was after this year. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, let me know what you all think of this editing style and if I should keep doing it for like ranking vids or just even more general vids like this. I know it's been a minute since I last uploaded. I'm not gonna lie, like I was really busy with just a bunch of stuff, specifically with exams and all that. Uh, but now I'm at a much more relaxed point, and I will be for like the foreseeable future. Um, so I've said this so many times when I've like gone for 2 weeks and come back, like, oh yeah, like this is where I start. Like, I'm gonna start uploading so much more often. But I'm gonna at least try to get a video out every week. In this style, obviously for prediction vids, it's just gonna be kind of screen recording uh, myself on Tapology or the UFC website for what I think of those fights. But for ranking vids, I'm gonna definitely try to keep it in this style. I like how it worked out here. Um, and yeah, this just let me know what you think of this editing style. I have at least one more vid coming out uh before the end of 2025. It'll be a tier list of the pay-per-views in general this year, not just the main events. So look out for that. It should be coming out before the new year. It definitely is coming out before the new year. And then we're gonna get into the new year just um, making whatever UFC content I really want to make while I still have 3.5 weeks from January 1st until the first UFC numbered event. I don't even know if I can call it a pay per view anymore. I'm still gonna call it a pay per view, honestly. But so I'm just gonna be making kind of whatever rankings or rants I kind of want to make during that time. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Redhead MMA out.